What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 446 of AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. 2 interviews have gone up in the last week since we spoke last here on hashtag. One with NXT star Joe Gacy. I uploaded that here to the channel on Monday, so check that out when you get a chance. And my interview with the now former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Matt Cardona, talking all about last weekend's Always Ready pay-per-view, his reign as NWA Champion, his time in Impact, potentially going back to WWE, and so much more. So that went up in video form last Thursday, and it's also going to be up in audio form, I'm pretty sure, on WrestleRant Radio tomorrow. So check those out when you get a chance. If you want to send in a question to this show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get right into it. Micah Does It from YouTube. His first question was, how do you feel about Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens becoming babyfaces and dethroning the Usos for one of the tag titles at Summerslam? I actually really like this idea. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this on WrestleRant Radio last week with RJ, or if I had seen someone say it online and then talked about it with Alexis or whatever, but no, I actually really like this idea. The other option I've seen people pitch is Sami Zayn winning the briefcase, the Money in the Bank briefcase this year, teasing, kind of telling that story with Roman Reigns being champion, being a part of the bloodline, and they treat him like shit now, or they treat him a lot better if he had the briefcase. That could be really interesting. The thing is that he wouldn't beat Roman Reigns for the championship, and he shouldn't. I don't think so anyway. That being said, him and Kevin Owens could absolutely win the tag team titles from the Usos. I really don't know, because like Roman Reigns, you look at the potential people that could dethrone him as champion or champions or whatever. I see Cody Rhodes, I see Roman Reigns, I see a few other people. With the Usos, because the tag team division on both brands, even with the Unify championships, is so depleted, no tag teams really stand out as potential candidates to take those titles from the Usos. So I know they're kind of like a makeshift tag team and whatever, and those aren't ideal, but hey, listen, RK Bro is a makeshift tag team, and they ended up being one of the best things to happen to that Raw tag team division in many years. Zayn and Owens have obviously history as partners. The thing is, right now, the only issue with doing that is that Owens is currently a heel. He just went back to being a heel late last year. I don't know if I would turn him babyface. Like, I thought the time to have them team was last summer, when Kevin Owens and Sami were feuding the last time, and Kevin Owens beat him a bunch. I really thought the endgame coming out of Mania last year would be to turn Sami Zayn face, because like Kevin Owens kind of saved Sami Zayn from Logan Paul last year at WrestleMania. They didn't do that. They just continued to have them feud, and Owens beat him a bunch more. So whatever. If you want to do that now, again, I don't know if I would turn Kevin Owens face. Does he even have to turn face is the question. I don't know. But beyond the Ezekiel stuff, I'm not really sure what you do with Kevin Owens on Raw. So doing a Zayn and Owens team again, and listen, I know one's on SmackDown, one's on Raw. Who gives a fuck? They're unified tag team titles anyway, so who even cares? And you said one of the tag team titles at SummerSlam. Honestly, just keep the tag team titles unified and have Zayn and Owens win them both. But I think that'd be a great culmination of this Zayn bloodline storyline is to have Zayn take the tag titles from the Usos, because he's kind of directly interacting with the Usos more than he is Roman. I mean, most of that is due to the fact Roman's not around, but I feel like Zayn's beef is more so with the Usos than it is with Roman Reigns. And we've already seen Roman and Sami, granted in like a 15-second match late last year on, wasn't Black Friday, I think it was the week after that, but still, he's already, faced Sami, he's already beaten Sami. Sami and Owens as a tag team challenge in the Usos would be a lot of fun. So the Usos, Zayn and Owens have actually never held tag team gold before in WWE. I'm not even sure if they've had a tag team title opportunity. Maybe one on like a one-off episode of Raw or SmackDown, but never like a program, I don't think, for the tag titles, which I think is a shame. So they've also been two of the best parts of Raw and SmackDown in many months, all year. So to kind of reward them for that, I don't see Owens beating Roman for either of the top titles either. So kind of give them a tag team title run. I think that could be very entertaining. That spans, both shows. Zayn's on Raw and SmackDown. Owens is on both brands as well. I think that'd be very entertaining. His second question, what do you think of a John Cena versus Drew McIntyre match for the Universal title at WrestleMania next year? Would that be a good match on the card? Yeah, that would be a good match. I know Drew was really campaigning for that match about a year ago when he was kind of still in the hunt for the WWE title. He was doing a lot of press. He mentioned it in multiple interviews with me. He wanted to face John Cena. That's a match we've actually never seen before one-on-one. They've faced off in a few multi-matches before, multi-man matches before, Royal Rumble, stuff like that. It's even a match that, even when McIntyre was in the company for the first time 10 years ago, they never did it then either. Like Orton and Drew, before they did it, in 2020, we had already seen a few times on TV many years ago. We've actually never seen Drew and Cena one-on-one before. So I would not mind that. I think that'd be a really good match. The problem is that, you said for the Universal title, yeah, I would de-unify the championships. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I got a question about that with Roman Reigns being the Unified champion, which we've talked about a lot lately, but I'll mention it again later on. I would hope by that point the two championships are ununified again. Just if you're going to have a brand split, you need two world champions. It's not working out right now with Roman being gone as much as he is. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really jump out to me right now. Oh, that's a match I'd buy a ticket to go see at WrestleMania next year. It's really all about the build. And Cena is so goddamn busy nowadays that I'm not even really sure he would be around for a full WrestleMania build. Like, he might be around for SummerSlam this year. It might only be a one-off on that 20-year anniversary of his debut on that June 27th Raw in a couple of weeks. He might not even be around for Money in the Bank or SummerSlam or whatever. That's really just fantasy booking. There's been no word on Cena coming back for any of that. And then when he came back last year, he was only around for 3 or 4 weeks before he had to go take off again. So, for a full WrestleMania build, and what's even accomplished? I mean, Drew, I would think, would have to win, but Cena coming back to challenge for yet another world championship that he's not going to win, what's really accomplished there? So I really don't have any desire to see that right now. It would be a good match. I was more excited for it about a year ago. Now, just with where Drew is and what Cena has done and whatever, I feel like there's more compelling matches for Cena to come back for than that. But it's an idea I've seen and heard of worse matches for Cena at Mania or SummerSlam or whatever, so I wouldn't be opposed to it. But there's nothing overly exciting about it right now on paper. Their third question: if Seth Rollins wins Money in the Bank again, how can he possibly top his WrestleMania cash-in? I don't think it's possible. I mean, it's possible. It's just very, 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 very unlikely. I mean, that WrestleMania cash-in was literally the perfect circumstance in every way. He had held the contract for almost a year. Brock was champion for a while. Him and Roman were having an amazing match in the main event of WrestleMania, which when Rollins cashed in at WrestleMania, it had never been done before, or let alone even attempted. So it wasn't predictable. People thought maybe Rollins will cash in afterward or on the next night's Raw. No, he cashed in at Mania, and he pinned Roman. Everyone was happy about it. He was a fresh face in the main event scene. It was fucking perfectly executed. The whole thing was perfect. So, yeah, I don't see Rollins, if he were to win Money in the Bank, which is definitely not a far-fetched possibility at all. I don't even think he would cash in successfully, but nothing is topping. I don't think there is no topping that WrestleMania cash-in. Then again, people probably thought the same thing about Edge's cash-in or Ziggler's cash-in, and Rollins' cash-in beat them both. So it could be done. It would really just have to be the perfect storm of circumstances and whatnot. I don't see it happening, but anything is possible. No L from Facebook, their first question was, thoughts on the whole Jeff Hardy incident, and do you think he's done in wrestling? I'll probably go into more in-depth about this on WrestleRant Radio with RJ on Thursday. Do I think he's done? No. He'll never be done because he probably knows himself that he will continue to get opportunities given to him. And not even just the second chance. The man has gotten second chances, third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances, so on and so forth. I mean, this man's been arrested so many times, and not just in his lifetime and in his career in wrestling, but in recent years alone. And I'm a big Jeff Hardy fan. I always have been, not just of the performer, but of the person. And I always found his story to be very inspiring. And it seemed like for a while there, coming out of the whole Victory Road thing in 2011, he was doing a lot better. He was on the right track. And he was clean and sober for a very long time. And I think he had been clean and I mean, I could be wrong and he just wasn't caught. But it seemed like he was in the right track from like 2011 through 2018. Like that's a good 6-7 years that he was clean. And then came the first, I think he was found intoxicated in public, I believe in early 2018. That was right before he came back on the post-WrestleMania Raw This was during, or like right before, I think, or right after the Ultimate Deletion or whatever it was called in WWE was filmed. Jeff Hardy was a part of it, but Matt, I remember, was really upset because he had all these plans for Jeff to do this stuff and maybe be a broken Hardy or whatever. And thankfully, Jeff came back soon after anyway, and he was fine. He wasn't arrested or whatever. It was kind of a weird bump in the road. And they even mentioned that in the Hardy Boys documentary they did a couple of months after that. But it was okay. And then like a year and a half later, I think, again, he's never spent significant time behind bars. I think he did spend some time in a jail cell like in 2009 for drug-related stuff that he talked about in that Hardy Boys documentary in 2018. I don't know if he's been back in jail for as long since then. And I think that might have been like 7 to 10 days or whatever. Like, he was in jail for a little while, I think. Not a little while, but like the longest he's ever been in prison. And so you fast forward to late 2019. Again, he had more issues, and all the incidents kind of blend together at this point because he had more issues. Did he have? I don't think he had more issues after that. But like, he was acting very strange before he left WWE, and he claimed he was sober, and he seemed like he was fine, and WWE jumped the gun on the drug test. The thing is, I mean, from my own speculation, and it's hard to speculate on this stuff without knowing the guy personally or knowing his family, so we really don't know all the facts. The thing is, though, is that WWE, with the test they gave him, and they offered him rehab late last year, we know that whole story. He's talked about it. We've heard all the reports and whatever. WWE wanted him back in the Hall of Fame. He said no, justifiably so. The thing is that I don't think drugs are the issue here. It seemed like he's been off the drugs for a very long time. It seems like here the issue is the addiction to the alcohol addiction that he has. The addiction to alcohol, because it seems like he's had issues with alcohol in 2018, 2019, now recently with what happened the other day. It's at a point now where there really is no excuse. Addiction is not an excuse. It's understanding why, I mean, it's not understandable, but it's the reason why it's happening. But at this point, there really is no reason why this man should be on the fucking road. Driving with a revoked/suspended license, I mean, that really should not be happening. No one is to blame here but Jeff Hardy. It's not Matt Hardy's fault. It's not Jeff's wife's fault. Everyone is accountable for their own actions. Even AEW and WWE are not at fault here. I mean, Jeff doing the crazy dumb shit that he's done in AEW so far, I think is really fucking dumb. Some of the table spot stuff that he did when he first came back to AEW was really stupid. The death match that he had with Jeff Hardy, or Darby Allin rather, was really fucking dumb as well. Some of the spots in that match, I mean, that probably shortened his career by another year or two. I mean, that was really fucking stupid. And then he looked kind of weird in the Double or Nothing match, which I enjoyed with the Bucks, but he was a little off if you rewatch the entrance back. There were reports that he was concussed. Jeff Hardy is far from the same performer that he was even 5 years ago. The man is extremely beaten down. The problem is that, yeah, Matt is really beaten down as well. Matt's not killing his body the same way that Jeff Hardy is. He's not doing the same dumb shit. I mean, Jeff Hardy continues to go through ladders and do really dumb fucking stuff to his body. That it's I mean, AEW really should not have allowed that shit. I mean, I'm not blaming them or Tony Khan or whoever, but some of the stuff that Darby and Jeff did in that match was really fucking dumb. In the state that Jeff Hardy is in, they really should not have even allowed that. Especially if they want to keep Jeff Hardy around, continue to use him. Because it's hard to understand really why this is happening. Jeff is clearly addicted to alcohol. He has a drinking problem. But is it because he's in pain? Is it because he's burnt out from being on the road? The man's extremely busy lately with all the signings he's been doing, indie shows, AEW stuff. He's been busy lately. Is it a troubled home life, which I don't think it is, but like, it might be a factor of everything or a couple of those things or whatever. Because whatever's causing it, and clearly he needs to go to rehab, there's no question about that. Whatever is causing it, and whatever the root issue is here, it needs to be solved. It might be just simply an eternal drinking addiction and whatever that needs to be, I mean, you'll never be 100% cured, but so being sober for a while and staying on that track, it's never easy. I've never dealt with that personally. I know people who have in my family and friends and stuff like that. Personally, I can never relate to that, so it's hard for me to say myself, obviously. But I think going to rehab and stuff like that would significantly help. I need to know more details as to whether, like, has he ever spent a significant amount of time in rehab? Like I know Matt did many, many years ago, and Matt was having issues like a decade ago. He went to rehab for a while. He may have had some issues after that, but he's largely been clean since then, and that was over a decade ago. and even said in a recent tweet that he hasn't touched alcohol in many, many years since he became a father for the first time in 2015, which is great. But like with Jeff, though, is it the road life? Like, he's not on the road as much as he was with WWE, although he is still doing appearances and indie stuff and whatever. Is it the bumps that he's taking? Is his body in pain and that's why he's drinking? Like, I would really love to know what the issue is because I just want to see the guy get better. At this point, though, there is no fucking excuse. There's zero excuse for his actions this year, last year, whatever it was. I'm not talking about the WWE stuff, but like acting erratically and all this other weird shit. There really is no excuse for him being on the road with a revoked/suspended license at this point. After all the issues he's had with the law and with drinking and whatever. And if leaving wrestling is the answer, and that really is how he's going to be better and not be on the road as much, then that's what should happen. So to answer your question in a very long answer here, I apologize. The answer is yes. If that's what it's going to take to get him on the right path, on the road to recovery, and to really tone down the alcohol stuff and to kick it forever, or at least, whatever. I mean, hopefully kick it forever, but, at least calm it down and for it to be much less of an issue, then yes, I would hope that he would have to leave wrestling in order to accomplish that, because his well-being, and not only his well-being, but the well-being of his family, the well-being of other people on the fucking road. I mean, it's really infuriating at this point that this continues to happen. No one is to blame but Jeff, but I'm glad AEW did the right thing by suspending him without pay, and he cannot come back unless he agrees to go to rehab and is better. He can't come. I mean, they could have very easily fired him, and that would have been completely understandable because this guy's a PR nightmare at this point. It really is sad that this continues to happen. Because, again, he's had a lot of issues before, and it's not like, he was caught in public intoxicated again. The man was driving, and he knows he should not have been driving. And not only that, but it's been said that he had one of those things in the car where you can't drive it unless you breathe into it and you're sober. He didn't have that in whatever car he was driving that he was caught in the other day. So the man is willingly, knowingly driving drunk, and he clearly doesn't care. If it continues to happen, he doesn't want to go to rehab for it. It sounds like he is. According to the Tony Khan statement, it sounds like he's open to it, which is good. And he needs to. So, listen, I really was excited for this last Hardy Boys run. It might already be over. We don't know if Jeff's going to be back. There's no guarantee of that. Even if he does get better, it might be best for everyone involved, Tony, Matt, whoever. And it's going to hurt the company, it's going to hurt Matt's run, whatever. But if that's what it takes to get Jeff off of the fucking road while he's drinking, and he shouldn't be really drinking at all at this point because he clearly is a problem, then that's what it's going to take. So, again, I don't want to see a wrestling world without Jeff Hardy, without a proper Jeff Hardy conclusion and, one last main event run I was really hoping for in WWE. We never got that. And now you see it's not really any of the company's faults. It's just Jeff's fault for continuing to fuck up. And the man has a problem. And I get it. The man's addiction, he has an addiction, he's addicted, whatever. But he needs to take care of the problem. The only person that can help him here is himself. If he doesn't want to help himself, no one is going to be able to help him. So until that day comes, he's fucked. And his wrestling career is over. The thing is that he has talked before, as other people have said, this is going to be his last chance. He himself has said in interviews, this is my last chance. It's not, because the man is Jeff Hardy. People love Jeff Hardy. People will continue to make excuses for Jeff Hardy and will continue to book Jeff Hardy. So they're only enabling him by doing that, and I don't think that's okay either. So this is a big issue. It needs to be rectified, and if he never comes back, but he's okay in life and he's doing a lot better, it's disappointing for me as a fan, but as a person, that's really what I want to see. The man be happy and healthy. But we can't, it's not even at the point now where it's just sad, I feel bad for him. I don't feel fucking bad at all. I would feel bad for the families affected by this man if you were to hit them on the middle of the fucking freeway or whatever. If he's driving drunk, you know what I mean? There is no excuse for his actions up to this point. It only gets worse and worse the more that it happens. So, the man has a problem to kick. He needs help, and he needs it now. So moving on here to their second question. What would be your top 5 Money in the Bank cash-ins of all time? I mentioned 3 of them earlier. Those would be the 3, probably in that order. Rollins, number 1. Ziggler, 2, from 2013. And Edge from 06 at number 3. Those, to me, are the undisputed top 3. Best cash-ins ever. Edge's was the first. It was perfectly executed. It was his first world championship. Ziggler is not technically his first world title. He held the world championship for like 15 minutes back in 2011, which was dumb. But just the way it was executed, again, he was Mr. Money in the Bank for so long. The crowd almost like exploded when he won, and when his music hit and everything, it was perfect. And there was that glimmer of doubt there that he might lose when Del Rio got the better of him in that cash-in, and Ziggler ultimately won, and the crowd went nuts, and they really, really were behind Ziggler at that point. And then Rollins' cash-in, as I explained earlier, was perfect. So those, to me, are the undisputed top three. The other two I would put in the top five, and there's a lot of them that are really, really good. The two I would put in the top five are these. Rob Van Dam from One Night Stand 06. No, it wasn't your typical cash-in. He announced it ahead of time, but the match, if you're counting that as a cash-in, it is. The match was amazing. The atmosphere was amazing. RVD winning was amazing. Everything about that match was great. It was a really, really great match. The atmosphere was incredible, and it was an amazing night for Rob Van Dam's career before he fucked it up a month later too. But the night itself was great, and the match itself was great, so you can't not include that. And at number 5 here, Randy Orton from SummerSlam 2013. This is one of my personal favorites. Coming off a great instant classic between John Cena and Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam 2013, Triple H, who was the special guest referee, congratulates Bryan on the win. You think the show is over. He hits him with a pedigree out of nowhere, which some people were kind of thinking might happen, but Triple H hadn't been a heel in so long that you're thinking it just wouldn't happen, but it did. And him turning on Bryan was a great moment. Triple H turns heel. Orton, who was already in the aisleway at that point, slowly turns around, walks towards the ring, clearly in cahoots with Triple H, pins Bryan, wins the championship. It was perfect. Everything that followed sucked. With the debut of the Authority and the way that it was handled, it was terrible. Even Orton's reigns were not good. But the actual execution of the moment was perfect. It was one of my favorite SummerSlam moments of all time, one of my favorite Randy Orton moments of all time. It was such a great swerve. I really, really liked that. And Orton had not been a heel in a while, and we all wanted to see it. Oh, it was so good. So that would probably be my top 5. Other ones that come to mind that were really good, I really liked the Miz's from 2010. I was always a big Miz fan, and still am, obviously. That cash-in was great. People were shocked that he even won the championship because the man, a lot of people perceived to be a joke, but he was built up very well. He had multiple tag team title reigns. He won the United States Championship twice. He won the Money in the Bank briefcase. He was already having brushes of main event stardom and matches with John Cena and Randy Orton and stuff like that. So it wasn't really that far-fetched for The Miz to become WWE Champion, but I still love that cash-in all these years later in the way that it went down. That one, CM Punk's first. And the second one was well done too, but the first one I remember very clearly because I had just became a wrestling fan a few months earlier. And again, the way that whole thing went down with Edge being the world champion, he was on SmackDown at that point, but he was on Raw to say goodbye to Raw and say, hey, you guys don't have a world title, ha 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 ha, and like kind of like say fuck off to Raw. He was making fun of Jim Ross, who I think actually started off the show. Maybe that's what it was, and Edge interrupted him. He had Jim Ross kicked out of the building. Edge, as he's leaving, gets his ass kicked by the man he cheated to beat the night before Night of Champions, Batista. Batista just destroys Edge all around ringside, hits him with a Batista bomb in the ring. He walks off. CM Punk comes in, who just got drafted to Raw the week earlier to win the World Championship with the Money in the Bank briefcase. That was great. I remember watching that live, being excited, not seeing it coming. That was great too. So those two come to mind. Dean Ambrose's was also really, really good for Money in the Bank 2016. He deserved that win. That was the night where all members of the Shield were WWE champion within like 5 minutes of each other. Roman was the champion going into that show. Rollins won the championship from Roman in a really, really good match. And then within 2 minutes, Ambrose, who had won the briefcase earlier in the show, cashed in on Rollins. So that was one of my favorite cash-ins as well. Corbin did not cash in successfully. Strowman did not cash in successfully. Brock's I didn't really care for. The Miz's second cash-in I didn't really care for, although it was definitely surprising. Who won it last year for the men? Big E's was well done. That was a really well done cash-in. For the women, Carmella's was fine. Bayley's I liked because I was there. I really liked that one. Alexa Bliss also cashed in that same night. So I've been in attendance for quite a few cash-ins. Those were well done. 2020 Asuka wasn't really a cash-in. Last year, Nikki Ash, I didn't really give a fuck. So my 5 are the ones that I mentioned. For the women, it would probably be Bayley. That would be my favorite female cash-in. But my top 5 ever are, in this order, Rollins, Ziggler, Edge, the first Edge one, Rob Van Dam, and Randy Orton. At Ray Bornigan, John Ritland from the Twitter machine, and on YouTube, check out his show, Real Honesty with John Ritland, does great work, as they always say. His first question was, so on Raw, they have Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles somewhere in the middle of the show, yet they have the pose down close it. Why is Vince McMahon like this? He says. So I'm not even excusing it. I thought that was baffling as well. The pose down closing the show was really dumb. I didn't even hate the segment. It was really stupid, but I thought it was going to be worse than it was. It was a really dumb segment. My issue with the segment was the fact that it went on last. That was the last thing that we saw, really. Bobby Lashley getting squirted in the face, get your mind out of the fucking gutter, by Theory's baby oil and then pushing him out of the ring or whatever. That was stupid. The only reason I can think as to why they did that was because they had an NBA final game on Monday, and that was probably airing opposite of the Rollins-Styles match. So to really rival that and to draw on viewers, they did that match. Now the problem with that is that they did not advertise Styles and Rollins until the show started. So we didn't even know that match was happening until the show started. Like, they really should have advertised it earlier in the day, a week earlier, a couple days earlier, whatever, and they didn't. Which, if they really want to boost the rating and get a good rating, I'm not really sure why you would do that. But, yeah, that was dumb. The layout of the show this week was not good, and I thought Rollins and Styles really should have gone on last. That was a great match. Having the pose down end the show was really dumb. And Bobby Lashley always gets tied into this bullshit, whether it's that, contract signings, or, arm wrestling matches and body slam challenges. Bobby gets drawn into the dumbest shit, and it always closes the show. I don't know why. It's really silly. His second question, so the latest Jeff Hardy news at this point, shouldn't he just finally get help, as well as stay away from the ring? He's more of a liability than anything else. I mean, they just got done talking about this. I won't go any further with it than I did, but I completely agree. He is a liability. He's a PR nightmare. I'd be embarrassed if I was the company. It wasn't their fault, but to have this man under contract, and listen, I don't really blame the whole WWE thing. I guess he was clean late last year, and he's only been having issues lately. Could be wrong about that, but that's just the way that it seems, whatever. But, yeah, I mean, he probably should stay away. If that's what it means for him to get better, then yes, he should stay away. Whether he will or not, we don't know. Is he going to stay away? Probably not. Jeff will always be back, and he'll always have a job in wrestling somewhere, because someone will always be willing to hire him, because it's Jeff fucking Hardy. Beyond this stuff, he's not problematic. It seems like he's a good guy, but that's not an excuse. Oh, he's a good guy, he's popular, let's bring him in. No, if you're enabling him by continuing to put him out there on the road, and I don't know, I don't think, I think Tony Khan did the right thing. They could have very easily fired him, and that would have been completely justifiable and understandable. They didn't do that, though. They said, listen, he can come back, which I'm glad they took action, though. For not to take any action at all would be incredibly fucking dumb. But they did. Tony Khan's not a dumb guy. He said, listen, he cannot be brought back unless he goes to rehab, which it seems like he's open to, complete it, be better, maintain his sobriety, and then he can come back. I think that's fair. If he can't do that, then sayonara, he can't come back. His next question from John, non-wrestling related, but what is the worst superhero movie you've seen, and why is it Morbius? If you haven't seen Morbius, what would your choice be? I mentioned this last week here on the show when at E13A Emmanuel asked about this, but yes, I did see Morbius, not when it came out because it was around WrestleMania time and I was busy. Alexis and I finally saw it a week ago. They re-released it in theaters, and I already discussed this last week, but because the movie became a meme online, I think Sony thought it would be fun. Not even funny, but they probably thought it'd be a genuinely good idea to re-release the movie. My theater was packed, albeit with 50 people in it. It was a smaller theater at the place that I went to, but, it was packed with people because they all wanted to see this disaster of a movie because it was all like young adolescent boys straight out of high school or early college or whatever because they knew the movie was terrible. They applauded at the beginning and the ending of the movie because it was so fucking bad. And Morbius sucked. I mean, I knew it was bad going in because I had heard a lot about it and the rating it got and stuff like that. But I had to see it, not just to believe it, but just to see it for myself because I usually watch all this stuff at some point anyway. And it was as bad as, not advertised, I'm sure it's being advertised as a great movie, but as people said it was. It was as bad as people said it was. It's funny that you watched it, John. I know you said on Twitter a few days ago you would be checking it out. I laughed when you tweeted that, thinking to myself, yeah, you're not going to enjoy this because this sucks. There are a lot of other superhero movies I would implore you check out. That is not one of them. All the Marvel movies, even some of the DC ones, are better than what I saw with Morbius. Speaking of DC, as far as bad superhero movies, I don't know if the Snyder Cut Justice League movie would be the worst. I did not care for that movie at all. 4 hours was way too fucking long, which I know why they did it, but it was really, I did not think that was good at all. Not the worst, but it was not good. Other bad superhero movies. There really hasn't been like a bad Marvel, but like the couple of Thor movies, Thor 1 and 2, they're not great at all, but they're not the worst I've ever seen. I actually fell asleep watching the first Thor movie before I became an MCU fan 10 years ago, because they rented it with my family, with my dad, I think he rented it, and we watched it, and we fell asleep halfway through because it was so fucking boring. I've rewatched it since then, and I have more of an appreciation for now being an MCU fan, but the first time I saw it, I was not a fan. So, Snyder Cut, the second Wonder Woman movie was fucking dumb, too. I love Pedro Pascal. Gal Gadot does a good job as Wonder Woman, but that movie was not good. That movie sucked as well. Morbius was worse, for sure. Some of those Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man 3 was definitely better in retrospect than Morbius, but that, at the time, was not good. It's not great all these years later. That was a mess of a movie. Oh, man, I'm trying to think what else. Those are the ones that come to mind. I'm sure there's plenty of others. Some of like, I didn't see Batman vs. Superman. I never saw that one. I'm trying to think what else. That first Suicide Squad movie was not great. It definitely sucked. I didn't hate it at the time, but it just was not a great movie. That would be on the list as well. But yeah, I think the worst one that comes to mind is Morbius. There probably is another one I'm not thinking of right now, but Morbius was really, really bad. Like, it was funny. It was so bad it was funny to me. So it wasn't so bad I left the theater halfway through. I wouldn't really do that anyway. But yeah, it was a really bad movie. If you haven't seen it, I honestly implore you to, just to see how bad it is and to laugh at how bad it is. But yeah, I think it's out on digital now. At Ewagoo91 from Twitter, what is your favorite Bryan Danielson / Daniel Bryan match? I think you've asked me a question about this before, about this match, but Over the Limit 2012 probably with CM Punk. I know we talked about that around the 10-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago, but I actually really, really liked that match and thought it was one of the better ones they've done. So yeah, I thought that was an excellent match. Other great Bryan Danielson matches. I mean, a lot of the matches he's had in AEW have been great. The first Kenny Omega match, the Adam Page matches were great. Probably not my favorite. If you're asking for my favorite, it probably would be that Over the Limit match. As far as others I thought were great, I take that back. My favorite Daniel Bryan match is not his best match, obviously, but it's the match that he had with The Miz, actually, from Night of Champions 2010. That and the Dolph Ziggler match, which we've also talked about here before, from Bragging Rights a couple of months later, but the Miz match from Night of Champions 2010, I had not, prior to that, I actually ordered one pay-per-view. It was Royal Rumble. This was the second pay-per-view I ordered, and it was well worth the price. It was a great show. I actually always used to like Night of Champions growing up. I love the idea of all the titles being defended. It's not overly special now, but it was back then. And that was honestly the match that made me a Daniel Bryan fan. The story was well done. Miz was great. It was in Chicago. The crowd popped when Bryan won. That was a really, really good match, and I thought that was a great show. So that's probably my favorite Daniel Bryan match, him and The Miz, from Night of Champions 2010. His second question, had Cody not tore his right pectoral muscle, do you think he could have become Mr. Money in the Bank? Yeah, I mean, he was my pick for months. I said probably from the beginning of when Cody came back, my fantasy booking scenario is that Cody wins Money in the Bank, not cash in, like, shockingly, but announces cash in, like, the Monday after the pay-per-view, and then say, listen, I'm cashing in at SummerSlam against Roman Reigns. You get a good 4-week build out of it, and he beats Roman Reigns on that show. It didn't really sound like they were building towards that anyway at SummerSlam. Even if Cody Rhodes did win, I still think Cody Rhodes would have won had he been around. Now they have to change plans, and it's probably going to be won by Rollins at this point. But before Cody, even before he got hurt, they were always rumored to do Roman versus Riddle, Roman versus Randy, and Roman versus Drew. We're getting Roman and Riddle on Friday because we're apparently not getting into the pay-per-view, which is stupid. But I would assume they're saving Roman and Randy for SummerSlam, which is fine. I'm not really sure where that would have left Cody, though. And then Roman and Drew we're definitely getting at Clash at the Castle in September, so I'm not even really sure. I mean, my idea probably wouldn't have happened anyway. Are they going to have Roman beat Drew at Clash of the Castle? Honestly, I think Drew is going to win. I don't really want him to. I want Cody to be the one to beat Roman, but it's probably going to be Drew at this point, just based on how they talked about it and Cody not being around till next year. I would keep both belts on Roman till next year. The problem is that his current reign at this point is getting very stale because he's not around. That's the issue. So, I do think he would have won, but because Cody's not around, it'll probably end up being Rollins. He's my current pick. His next question, who do you see becoming the inaugural All-Atlantic Champion? So you have someone from New Japan. They're doing like qualifying matches in New Japan to determine who that entrant is going to be at Forbidden Door. It's probably going to be Ishii. I don't really recognize the other people aside from Tomohiro Ishii, so it's probably going to be Ishii in that match at the pay-per-view. You have Ishii. We saw Pac qualify. Who qualified last week? Yeah, he beat Buddy Matthews, so Pac is in the match. Pac never really wins anything of note. I don't think it's going to be Pac. I mean, I guess it could be Pac, but you have him. Malachi Black versus Penta is another qualifying match, either on Friday's Rampage or next week. It's probably going to be Malachi, and I assume tonight we get Miro qualifying over Ethan Page, as he should. Miro, honestly, I'm thinking Miro. They really want to push Miro. He was great with the TNT title. I like Pac and I like Malachi. Malachi's got to win something of note soon anyway as well. But it's probably going to end up being Miro because he was great in that TNT title role. That championship's tied up right now with Sky and Wardlow and all that other shit. So I'm thinking Miro. I don't think it's going to be Ishii. I mean, it would be cool if it was Ishii. Ishii can defend it over in Japan and sometimes in AEW. But my money currently is on Miro, winning the whole thing. At Kyle Rochelle 19, their first question was, are Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins the two favorites to win Money in the Bank this year? Or is it Liv Morgan's time? It would be cool to see Liv Morgan win, but Becky is so good in my opinion that watching her with the briefcase would be fun. I don't know who the top contender for the women is. I've been saying Liv, and then I said Lacey. I'm still thinking it's Lacey. I think they know that Becky does not need to win. I mean, their second question, I'll just answer this right now too. Their second question was, why are people not liking the fact that Becky Lynch could win Money in the Bank? Is it because she doesn't need the briefcase to become champion again? How about Becky cashing in on Ronda Rousey? It would make SmackDown a little bit of fun to watch because it hasn't been good. Yeah, I don't think Becky needs to cash in on Ronda. I don't think SmackDown needs Becky. I'm not really sure where you factor her in there. The SmackDown women's division is not great, but Becky's place is on Raw for right now. Maybe draft Becky in October during the draft, but at that point you would have to draft Seth as well. They kind of keep them on the same show. I didn't really think Becky and Seth needed to go back to Raw in the first place last year, but putting them back on SmackDown may not be the worst thing, because you could get Ronda and Becky out of it for Mania or another pay-per-view or whatever. No, I really, really, really do not want to see Becky win the briefcase. I have no desire to see that. She's great, you're right. Her with the briefcase, though, it's just not necessary. One, she doesn't need it, and neither does Rollins. But the thing is like, I don't know, Becky's been in the title picture. The biggest difference between Becky and Seth, being Mr./Miss Money in the Bank or whatever, is that Rollins really has been nowhere near the top titles in a long time. He got a title shot at the Rumble, but beyond that, he's not getting regular title shots. Becky is. I mean, she was champion basically for 3 straight years. And then she was right back in the title picture. I mean, it wasn't exactly their fault because Sasha and Naomi walked out. They were just, it was what happened. They booked the match on the fly. But we got Becky back in the title picture at Hell in a Cell. Now, it was a great match, so I'm not complaining. But I really don't want to see Becky again teasing, and she would probably cash in and win. And at that point, I feel like it's a waste. People don't like Lacey, I get it, but her as a babyface has potential if they actually stick with it. And I'd rather see her cash in and announce it ahead of time, personally. And they'll probably turn her heel on Ronda Rousey. I don't really care too much for that, I guess. But even Lacey, though, even she's a fresher face than Becky Lynch in the title picture. So honestly, I'm more in favor of Lacey winning. Who would I want to win? I like Lacey, but Liv Morgan deserves it. I mean, she should have been in it last year. She should have fucking won it last year. She really should have. I mean, Nikki Ash winning was dumb. They tried to get the big reaction out of it. No one gave a fuck in the long run. The moment was cool, I guess, but the gimmick sucks. The character sucks. The run sucked. It really served no purpose. They really should have given it to Liv Morgan, who's already over. People want to see her succeed. She never wins when it matters most. Give her a big win at Money in the Bank. Have her be Miss Liv, Money in the Bank, or whatever. I don't fucking know, but I would have Liv win. It's probably going to be Lacey, which is fine. I really do not want to see it be Becky. I do not think Becky needs it. And her, teasing, cashing it on Bianca and continuing that, I have no desire to see that right now. At noob_n_co1991, their first question, what are your thoughts on Always Ready on Saturday, and who do you think, or do you think it was the right move to give Trevor Murdoch back the NWA World's title? The show was fine. I thought it was one of their weaker pay-per-views. It was so fucking long. It took me forever to go back and watch it on Sunday. I think I may have finished it on Monday. It was that long of a show. I was busy on Sunday. I watched most of it, finished it on Monday. Man, that was a long fucking show. I actually reviewed the whole show for WrestleRant.com in written form if you want to hear or see my thoughts on that. But, I mean, there were some good matches. Cardona getting hurt did not help at all. That wasn't even really clear how they were going to fix that situation until the match happened in the main event, the 4-way to determine a new champion. You had Murdoch in there, who had literally just lost the championship to Cardona a few months ago. Murdoch winning the championship, I mean, we talked about this last year. I didn't love the idea, but like, okay, people like him beating all this, he's the common man, cool, the Harley Race connection. That was fine. They gave him his run. He was champion for 6 months. It wasn't a great run. It was fine. I don't want to see him be champion again. I know he's doing the whole tweener thing right now, but him winning back the belt already just feels so rushed, and it's just not interesting. And the NWA roster isn't exactly stacked, but they had other options. I mean, bringing back Dexter Lumis, a.k.a. Sam Shaw, putting the belt on him probably would not have been ideal, but even he would have been more interesting in that role than fucking Trevor Murdoch. Tom Latimer is not the most exciting performer, but that would have been somewhat interesting. And honestly, Nick Aldis was champion for 3 years. People did not like the reign. I'm a big Nick Aldis fan. Even he getting the belt back as a babyface this time as opposed to a heel would have been more interesting than Trevor Murdoch regaining the gold. So I was not a fan of that outcome. Even the Pope becoming champion, I don't know where he is right now, but I think that would have had more potential than fucking Trevor Murdoch winning the belt. So I don't know what their end game is here. If that was just an abrupt instinct decision where they're like, oh, a knee-jerk reaction where it's like, oh, we got to put the belt right back on Murdoch. But he's just not interesting, though. I mean, he was a fine champion. He served his purpose, but to put the belt right back on him after, a couple of months is pretty lame. So I was not a fan of that. Their second question. Next week is the qualifying match between Asuka and Becky Lynch. Do you think it's their story, that their story will come to an end at the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, or will it end at SummerSlam? I think it's got to end before then. I really don't have any desire to see the storyline go all the way to SummerSlam. I mean, they work well together. They've already been feuding for almost 2 months now. They don't really need to have a 3 or 4 month long feud. They've already had 2 matches. They're having their 3rd match next week. So to have a 4th or 5th match, that's not even counting the other matches from years past. To have another match at SummerSlam, why? I mean, honestly, I would just blow it off next week. Have Asuka or Becky win, and then move on. Maybe the other person, whoever loses, can end up in the match anyway, somehow, via a last chance qualifier or whatever. Because I still think AJ, if he's not in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, if he doesn't qualify another way, what does he do? Does he face Finn Balor? I mean, I guess. I would save that for SummerSlam, but they probably have other ideas for Finn and Edge and whatever. So, anyway, I just don't really want to see it dragged out till SummerSlam. I mean, the feud's been going on already for a couple of months. They had Asuka get involved in Becky's 24/7 title match last week, which was dumb, which to me tells me, all right, the feud's running out of juice. We got to move on here. I don't know what you do with Becky instead. I mean, I guess you could do maybe Bianca and Becky again at SummerSlam, a year removed from their last match, or not their last match, but their first match where Becky cheated Bianca, or not cheated, but you know what I mean. A year later, you could do that, but if that's the case, does Rhea not win at Money in the Bank and they just move on? I mean, I don't think that's a one pay-per-view match. I think you should probably have Rhea beat Bianca. So there's a lot of moving parts there. Regardless of what they do with Asuka and Becky at SummerSlam, I think another match, a 4th or 5th match in 2022 alone at that pay-per-view would just be overkill and no one would really care. So they need Becky on the show in some form or fashion. They'll figure something out. Another match with Asuka, though, to me, is not the answer. His next question: do you think it was a good idea to unify both the WWE and Universal titles and give it to Roman Reigns, even though he's not on TV as of late? So 2 months later, is it still a bad idea to give Roman Reigns the unified WWE and Universal titles? Yes, I think I made a whole headline about this in another video. I'm sure we've talked about this ad nauseum lately, but to keep it short and sweet, the answer is yes. I just think it was really stupid to put the belts on a guy that they probably knew at that point was not going to be around. And if he signs a contract after Mania saying, I'm not going to be around all that much, you pull an audible and take one of the titles off of him. So at least you have one world championship walking around, one world champion walking around. one world title to fight for. They have nothing right now. And the mid-card titles really don't mean a hell of a whole lot. So that's a problem. But yeah, it was definitely a mistake to do the Unified title thing. To have Roman Reigns as the Universal Champion not be around is not ideal, but it's okay, I get it. But to have no world titles because Roman Reigns has both belts was a fucking disaster, and it's been bad. They're having him come back on Friday, but is he not? He's not going to be Money in the Bank. That's the third straight pay-per-view. We will not have a world championship match. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So no, I'm not a fan of it. And I thought it was dumb to do it then. It's an even worse idea in retrospect, knowing what we know now with Roman Reigns not being around. Final 3 questions from E13A, who I mentioned earlier. First question was, with the Hardys reunion now being cut short, do you think there's still anything for Matt Hardy in AEW? I don't think Matt Hardy's going anywhere. I think they won't get rid of him. Matt Hardy can be an asset. I like Matt Hardy. In the ring, he's past his prime, obviously. What do you do with him? That's the thing, though. Like, they already have a stacked singles division. He doesn't really need to be in the TNT title picture. They should probably just pair him up with someone else in a tag team. I mean, like, he already did the manager thing. He already was Big Money Matt. He already had the heel run. He was kind of already a babyface before that stuff. He did the broken stuff already. I mean, not for very long, and there were no fans there for it. So I guess he can go back to being broken. That's probably one thing you can do. I'm sure most people are over that by now, but it's an idea. He probably, if Jeff's not going to be around for a while, I imagine Matt will not be on TV a hell of a whole lot, which is a shame. I mean, the HFO stuff sucked. It really could have been a lot better with better booking, but they fucking screwed those guys with the booking and made them look like losers. That wasn't entertaining. Yeah, I think there's always a role for Matt Hardy in any company doing something, and he really should be a manager at this point. The problem was that the last time they had him be a manager, he was managing losers, and it got nobody over. Private Party are 10 times worse off, not because of Hardy, but because of the booking when they were with Hardy. So in the interim, I don't really know what you do with him. Maybe he links up with Darby Allin and Sting. He gets involved with those two. Maybe him and Darby can team. Darby really should be on to bigger and better things at this point, but that's just me. Yeah, there's no one obvious spot. Maybe he can, I don't even really know, honestly. Matt really does not need a regular role on TV at this point as a wrestler, which is why I thought the tag team stuff worked, because there's a lot of juice in a Hardy Boys reunion. But we only got it for 2 or 3 months before Jeff got busted because he was a fucking idiot and drove drunk. So, yeah, it's very disappointing because this affects Matt big time. I don't really know what you do with him. And he's definitely not going to be doing anything of note going forward. I mean, maybe they will find something for him to do. Again, maybe he goes back to being broken. How many people will actually be into that in 2022? That's the question. I really don't know. We'll see, I guess. We'll see. But it's definitely a bummer for Matt, for sure. His second question, do you think Seth Rollins will ever be a main event babyface again? Without a doubt. I mean, Rollins has already turned so many times, but people like him. He'll be in the company for many more years to come, I would imagine. You know, he's been a heel for a while. People are already cheering for him, like I said. So it's really more a matter of when and not if he will be a babyface again. And the guy's never had anything less than like the upper mid-card. So he'll never be like contending for the 24/7 championship, I imagine. I mean, I know Becky did on Monday's Raw or last week or whatever, but you know, Rollins will never be on main event consistently. He will always be a top performer in this company, especially for as long as they don't have any other stars. So with that being said, they will have him be a babyface again, and it's going to be great because his last babyface run, for the most part, was awesome, and people loved him, and he had great matches. So we're kind of approaching that run again, and I honestly was hoping we would get it coming out of the Cody Rhodes stuff, but they insisted on keeping him heel for some reason. I don't really want to see Edge as a babyface right now. They're turning him instead. It's really confusing, but to answer your question, yes, it's more a matter of when and not if we will get babyface Seth Rollins as a main eventer again. Last question also from @E13A. Do you think NXT UK would have become more popular by now if COVID hadn't happened and they still did takeover specials? That's a good question, like the whole what if COVID didn't happen, what would have happened with NXT UK? Honestly, and I like NXT UK, nowadays it's almost boring as fuck to watch for the most part, but it was honestly one of WWE's better shows for a little while there in like 2019, early 2020, and then COVID fucked everything up, and it hasn't been as good in a while. Especially without fans or limited fans or whatever. The atmosphere is just not the same. That being said, I don't think NXT UK would have really grown that much more than it did. Because you got to remember, it's not like they started NXT UK in early 2020, right before COVID happened. The brand had been around for like a good year and a half before they finally had to shut down for a little while due to no fans in 2020. The brand started in late 2018. No one was watching the show at that point. Very few people were even watching in 2019. They had an amazing roster of talent. That was back when they had Rhea, they had Tony, Walter, Pete Dunne, both of Mustache Mountain, Jordan Devlin, among other people. They had a great roster back then. But even then, though, people really were not watching the show. I watched and reviewed every episode of NXT UK. And looking at my timeline, no one was watching in 2018. People would tune in for the takeovers, and the takeovers were great. The problem, though, was that it never really translated to the weekly product. We probably would have continued to see more crossover between NXT and NXT UK. Would have the brand become bigger, as big as NXT itself is? Absolutely not. I feel like NXT UK is just such a niche thing as far as it's for our British audience. And I don't know, the product itself is good. It's not like only English people can enjoy the show, but they never really put the emphasis on it. It was like 205 Live. I'm surprised NXT UK is even still around at this point. It hasn't gone the way of 205 Live yet, because it's really more a matter of when and not if that's going to happen. But yeah, 205 Live, same thing. It wasn't really a niche thing. It was, but it wasn't. It could have been bigger. Same thing with NXT UK. It's a very niche product, and it's not like it's even treated as anything important. So with that being said, no one's going to care automatically. And that's why it's in the state that it is. Now they don't really have a lot of talent. The show really isn't all that good. They're bringing in NXT 2.0 people, which fucking terrible. They have Lash Legend over there, Von Wagner. It's been bad. They've had a couple of good matches lately with Mustache Mountain and Mako Satomura, Ilya Dragunov. They're the bright parts of the show, but beyond them, the well runs dry. And there's still a lot of people that have been there since day one who are really not that exciting. It's the people that'll never get called up to the main roster. So it is what it is. But yeah, that's my those are my thoughts in NXT UK in a nutshell, and my overall episode for #AskGSM this week. So thank you guys for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Episode 446 here today for Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. I appreciate you guys as always. If you want to send in a question for future episodes, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Like I said earlier, guys, check out my new video interviews with Ezekiel from last week, Raw Superstar, Elias's younger brother. Joe Gacy from NXT, that went up on Monday, and my interview with the now former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Matt Cardona, which went up last Thursday here on the channel in video form and should be up in audio form on WrestleRant Radio tomorrow. So with all that being said, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.